I was miserable. Until I did this petty revenge. My name is Liam, and for the last 3 years I've been a cog in the machine at Market Edge, a marketing firm that's about as edgy as a butter knife. I wasn't unhappy exactly. I came in, did my job, and went home. But then Brenda happened. Brenda was my direct supervisor. Before her, things were fine. Now they were a slow, agonizing descent into office hell. It started subtly. My ideas, offered in meetings, would be met with a blank stare, only to be enthusiastically championed by Chad 5 minutes later. Chad, the bane of my existence. He was Brenda's golden boy. He was also lazy, incompetent, and perpetually glued to his phone, probably playing Candy Crush. He had the creative output of a paperclip, yet Brenda treated him like the second coming of Don Draper. The early signs were dismissible, a project I poured my heart into. Chad presented it, word for word, and basked in Brenda's effusive praise. My attempts to politely point out my contribution were met with a dismissive wave of the hand and a team effort, Liam team effort. It happened again, and again, and again. The smaller things chipped away at me too. Brenda giving Chad the prime office supplies, while I was stuck with the pen that smeared ink like a toddler with a crayon. Brenda scheduling Chad for the fun client meetings, while I got stuck compiling data reports that made my eyes bleed. My frustration grew. I started keeping a mental tally of Chad's accomplishments versus my own. It was a landslide victory for me in terms of actual work done, but a devastating loss in terms of recognition. I confided in Sarah, a coworker who sat across the aisle from me. She was sympathetic, having experienced Brenda's eccentricities firsthand. Just keep your head down, Liam, she advised. Document everything. And for God's sake, don't make Brenda mad. Easy for her to say. The breaking point came with the Henderson account. It was a big one, a potential game changer for the firm. I spent weeks researching, developing a campaign strategy, crafting the presentation. I practically lived on coffee and takeout. Chad, meanwhile, mostly complained about the office coffee and asked me to proofread his emails, which were riddled with grammatical errors that would make a 6th grader cringe. The day of the presentation arrived. Mr. Thompson, the regional manager, was in attendance. Brenda beamed. Chad strutted to the front of the room like he owned the place. And then he presented my work. Every slide, every data point, every carefully crafted sentence was delivered with Chad's signature brand of smarmy confidence. Brenda nodded approvingly, occasionally interjecting with brilliant. Chad simply brilliant. I sat there, seething. It was like watching someone steal your car and then drive it into a parade. Mr. Thompson, bless his oblivious heart, seemed impressed. He asked Chad a few questions, which Chad answered with vague, buzzword-laden responses that somehow managed to sound profound. Brenda wrapped up the presentation with a flourish. Chad has truly outdone himself on this one. He's a real asset to our team, not a single mention of my name. Not a single acknowledgement of my contribution. That was it. Something snapped. The years of pent-up frustration, the stolen credit, the blatant favoritism all coalesced into a burning desire for something. I wouldn't call it revenge. Maybe karmic rebalancing. I couldn't just quit. I had bills to pay. I couldn't confront Brenda directly. She just twisted around and make me look like the unreasonable one. So I decided to play the long game. A game of petty, carefully calculated disruption. I started small. I subtly altered Chad's computer settings so that his autocorrect replaced common marketing terms with ridiculous synonyms. Synergy became teamwork Jamba Juice. Brand awareness became noticing stuff. It caused minor chaos, but nothing that could be traced back to me. Brenda's desk was next. She was incredibly meticulous, everything in its precise place. I started subtly rearranging things, moving her stapler an inch to the left, swapping the order of her pens, replacing her motivational sticky notes with pictures of kittens. She started to unravel, just a little. I could see the barely concealed twitch in her eye as she scanned her desk, trying to find the invisible enemy. I knew I needed to be careful. I couldn't afford to get caught. So, I cultivated a new persona, the helpful, technically savvy coworker. I started offering to help Brenda and Chad with their computer problems, subtly probing for information about their online habits and security protocols. I learned that Brenda used the same password for everything, and Chad routinely clicked on suspicious links in his email. My conversations with David, the IT guy, became increasingly frequent. Ostensibly, I was seeking his advice on minor technical glitches, but really, I was picking his brain about network security and data encryption. David was a cynical, sardonic guy, but he was also surprisingly helpful. I didn't tell him what I was planning, but I suspect he had his suspicions. One day, I accidentally forwarded Brenda an email containing a phishing link. A few hours later, I overheard her frantically calling David, complaining that her computer was running slow. I smiled inwardly. Next up, Chad. I knew he was obsessed with his fantasy football league. I also knew he had a terrible password. It took me all of 5 minutes to hack into his account and make a few strategic trades. He was not happy. The tension in the office was palpable. Brenda and Chad were constantly on edge, accusing each other of sabotage. They were like two cats in a bag, ready to tear each other apart. I needed to escalate. I needed something bigger, something that would really shake things up. I remembered a conversation I had with David about the company's shared drive. He mentioned a vulnerability in the system, a way to access sensitive files with the right know-how. I spent weeks researching, learning, and planning. I worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning desire for justice. Or, petty revenge. The day I put my plan into action was the most nerve-wracking day of my life. I waited until everyone was at lunch. I slipped into David's office and borrowed his security key card. He had a habit of leaving it on his desk. I then went to the server room. The air was cold, the hum of the machines deafening. I navigated the network, found the vulnerability David had mentioned, and I didn't steal any data. I didn't delete any files. I just rearranged them. I moved all of Chad's presentations into a folder labeled Brenda's Burner Pics Do Not Open. I moved all of Brenda's performance reviews into a folder labeled Chad's Guide to Getting Away with Doing Nothing. And then, for good measure, I changed the wallpaper on Mr. Thompson's computer to a picture of a cat wearing a tiny hat. I returned the keycard to David's desk, my heart pounding in my chest. I went back to my cubicle and tried to act normal. The afternoon was chaos. Chad frantically searched for his presentations, convinced that someone had stolen them. Brenda shrieked when she discovered the contents of the Chad's Guide folder. And Mr. Thompson, well, let's just say he wasn't thrilled with his new desktop background. Brenda launched a full-scale investigation. She interrogated everyone, including me. I played the innocent bystander, feigning concern and offering helpful suggestions. "Have you checked the recycle bin, Brenda?" I asked innocently. Maybe someone accidentally deleted them. She glared at me, her eyes narrowed. I could tell she suspected something, but she couldn't prove anything. The fallout was glorious. Chad received a stern warning from Mr. Thompson about his unprofessional behavior. Brenda was forced to apologize for the misunderstanding regarding the performance reviews. And Mr. Thompson, well, he eventually changed his wallpaper back, but I caught him smiling at it once or twice. The atmosphere in the office shifted. Brenda was less overbearing, Chad was more subdued, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I hadn't solved all my problems, but I had at least managed to disrupt the status quo. I never confessed to my acts of petty revenge. I doubt anyone will ever know the full extent of my involvement. But I like to think that, somewhere deep down, Brenda and Chad suspect that I was the architect of their misfortune. Mr. Thompson, surprisingly, seemed to notice the change in me. He started giving me more responsibility, asking for my input on projects. He even complimented my quiet competence. Maybe, just maybe, I had finally earned his respect. Or maybe he just felt sorry for me. Either way, I'll take it. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a bully isn't to confront them head-on, but to subtly undermine their power from within. I wouldn't necessarily recommend my approach to others. It was risky, it was immature, and it could have easily backfired. But for me, it was a necessary release. It was a way to reclaim my sense of agency in a situation where I felt powerless. I'm still working at Market Edge. Brenda is still my supervisor. Chad is still Chad. But things are different now. I'm not miserable anymore. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I'm not afraid to stand up for myself. And every once in a while, when I catch Brenda looking at me with suspicion in her eyes, I can't help but smile. A small, knowing smile that says, "You'll never know for sure, will you?"